Hola, delicious human. Welcome to episode 54. As always, Sunny Bonani Dumalanga on afternoon. Bon dia. Goeie aand. Skus man. I haven't spoken Afrikaans in quite some time, so my goeie aand is nie baie goed nie. Skus. If there are any Afrikaans folks out there, drop it in the comments. Say a little something, and I'd be happy to touch up and reignite my use of that beautiful language. So today's episode, I have an image that just keeps popping into my mind. It doesn't want to leave me alone, even though I'm not quite sure where it's going to take me or why I'm needing to share it. I'm not even sure what this episode is going to be titled as it stands in the here now moment. But the memory or the image that keeps coming into the forefront of my awareness is an event which took place it was 2019. And I was at the beautiful meditation retreat in the Cederberg Mountains in Cape Town, South Africa. And I was there for a 10-day silent retreat, learning a particular type of meditation. And I'm just going to set the scene a bit, you know what I mean? Because you need the content to understand the context of the story, you know what I mean? So at this meditation retreat, you get woken up at 4 a.m, lights out at 9:30, and you sit and you meditate for between 10 to 12 hours every single day over the 10 days that you are there. You have a delicious breakfast, you have a delicious lunch, all vegetarian, and there's no dinner. And there's no form of communication, nothing. So you can't speak, no verbal words to yourself. Well, in your mind, yes, but out into the open ether. And you also can't communicate with anybody. And that means eye contact, because eye contact is a form of communication. So yes, you can't communicate with anyone, be it words, expression, sign language, none of that. So you are literally invited to be with yourself during this entire process and during this entire immersive experience. So on a particular day, the sun was shining. The day was so beautiful and so clear. I remember we had braked just after lunch. We probably had an hour and a half break after our lunch before the next meditation section started. And I remember sitting outside, and it's situated literally, it feels like you're being held by the mountains. So these massive Cederberg mountains literally are encased around you in this beautiful U shape. And the center is situated right in the middle of it. And it's just, yes, beautiful surrounding of fynbos and all the fauna and flora that beautiful area has to offer. And I remember sitting outside, and the lead of the course at that particular time, or the person who was helping or making sure everyone's needs were taken care of, I remember she came up to me, and I was like, well, you're already breaking some rules yourself. But it was interesting. So she came, I was kind of sitting a little bit into the forested area. And I was just sitting there on a little log, just being with myself and my energy and my thoughts and whatever else comes up during those transformative experiences. And I remember her coming up to me and going, oh, just be careful, because, there might be snakes and they're pretty venomous here. So I was like, okay, cool, thank you. I didn't say that. I just was like acknowledging it. I'm not allowed to speak. So I was just like I heard you. And it was so interesting because I was like, girl, you just broke silence. So, anyway, but that's not the story I want to share with you. It's just interesting that that also came up. But yeah, so while I was sitting there in the edge of the walkway, just a little bit into the forest, I was observing this. I don't know if it's called a troop of ants, guys. My apology. I don't know what the collective for ants is, but for this here now moment, I'm going to refer to them as a troop. If you know the answer, drop it down in the comments for my own educational purposes. But yes, I was observing and witnessing these big black ants. So they were like quite big guys. You know, they weren't the little ones. They were a decent size. And they were carrying this worm, pretty sizable worm. And this worm was like half alive, half on the verge of death. And there they were, transporting this worm, scuttling between them, moving. The one from the front goes to the back. And it was like this real maneuvering process. It was quite mesmerizing and hypnotic to watch. And I was watching them what felt like 15, maybe 20 minutes, not a word of a lie. I don't know the time because we didn't have any gizmos, gadgets, or watches or anything like that. So I'm just basing it on my intuitive knowingness. And yes, so there they were, 20 minutes. 20 minutes of moving this worm from one side of the road all the way to the other side of the road. And they were working. They were working really, really hard. You could see there was like a little system in place. Things were under control. Everything was operational and working. There was communication. That worm was moving, literally being held up by the hands. It almost looked like the worm was walking on sand, but yes. So there I was watching them, and within a split second, after me watching these ants for these ants and the poor worm for 20 minutes, there swoops in a bird. I'm not sure what bird it was, to be honest with you. Here comes a bird, picks up the worm, and now the ants are like, what the fuck? And some have hung on to this worm for dear life because they probably think this thing's resurrected itself or something, okay? Needless to say, here comes this bird, picks up the worm, and just proceeds to smack that worm from side to side, from left to right, from right to left. And all the ants are like, ah! They're flying off this poor ant that they have literally transported what felt probably for them like kilometers. Okay. And I was just like so awestruck by how quickly things could change. Here it was, 20 minutes felt like a really long time where these ants were motioning and, moving their lunch over to their little den. And it just took a split second. Sounds still good. It just took a split second for that whole paradigm to completely shift. And it really did make me think about, like, why was I being bear witness to this experience? Things don't just happen coincidentally and for absolutely no bloody good reason. Like, everything has a purpose. We are either consciously aware of the purpose or we're not, or the reasoning or the understanding finds us perhaps at a later time when it's meant to come into our awareness at that point, right? So here I am telling you about this story that happened in good old 2019, and I just couldn't get this image out of my head. The ants and the worm and the bird. There they were in my mind, and it was something that I felt like I just needed to share and reflect and contemplate upon. So I guess there's a couple of things that really come up for me. It's, as I've shared, that element and aspect of how things can just shift and change in an instant. We think we are so in control of our lives. We have it all figured out. And then in swoops the bird and smacks that worm, bitch, from side to side. You're like, ah! So that's definitely one thing that stood out for me. Another thing that stood out for me was once this worm had been taken and eaten by this bird, the ants were kind of like left scuttling around, wondering what the hell has just happened. But you could see that they had just figured out, okay? And it was amazing to see and witness how quickly they just reconfigured themselves. It's almost like they just pulled themselves back together and off they went to find something else. It wasn't like they were moping and dragging their feet around and being like so sad because, you know, fuck that bird. None of that. It was just like, oh, well, you know, it's just part of life. Off we go. Let's find another worm. Let's find something else. So yeah, there was something else that really stood out for me where, you know, sometimes I guess as humans, we tend to hop on and draw all these emotions, especially, I was going to say, especially the denser emotions. We tend to sometimes get stuck there as if we're like walking and treading through thick molasses. But I would say that the same maybe applies to those higher resonating emotions, you know, where we're experiencing the joy, the bliss, the excitement. And then when that starts to dissipate and fade and things start to change, as it will always do, we're left stuck there because we're constantly trying to get to that emotion all the time. We're trying to reach for the joy, reach for the bliss, and we're not being present in the here and now moment. So yes, I guess those ants were there to remind me of being present in the here and now moment, literally. And as I say that, it's like the big light bulb went on for me because here I am, 8 years almost, and the epiphany has only hit me now. I remember at that particular meditation when I did go, I felt like I was on a continual loop of revisiting the same stories, the same scenarios, like almost feeling, you know, like the victim mentality and replaying the same scenes and stuff coming up in my life. And as I'm speaking in this very here now moment, that's why I fucking love doing this daily vlog, because it might not be assisting you, but bloody hell, I'm having some pretty epic insights, transformative moments, experiences, awakenings, learnings, transformations. I don't know, call it whatever you want. But yes, it was definitely perhaps there to remind me just to be present, be here now, because a bird can come swoop up and take that worm, and then what you going to do? What you going to do? You're going to keep on thinking about the bloody worm that's already been like half digested as the bird's flying away. You know what I mean? So yes, I guess let me think about and reflect what other insights or messages maybe want to come through based on this particular episode and share. I guess another insight that this has conjured up and evoked within me is the realization of how powerful a storyteller nature can be. You just need to step outside and observe nature, and she will give you the guidance through the experiences or the observations that you bear witness to. But I guess it's up to us to be present enough and connected enough to be able to understand the language that nature's communicating to us in, right? If we are so detached and completely removed from the language of nature, then obviously we're going to be missing her signs, symbols, and messages because we don't speak the same language. You know what I mean? So yes, I have grown an appreciation for nature, and I too am still learning how to speak the language, still learning how to translate the messages. Um, but it is a very forgiving process, and it's a very tangible way of communing and walking with God. Now, some of you have either got, she said the word God, people. She said the word God. Yeah, it's quite interesting for me when I do use that word, God, either resonates or it like makes your insides kind of do that. Um, for a really, really long time, I didn't use that word. Didn't use the word God. Because I was raised Roman Catholic, did the communion, did the confirmation, was born into the belief that we are born into a world of sin. And even men, I never forget, this was quite a big transformative process for me. Not menstruation, man. What's the other one where you give yourself some pleasure? Masturbation. I don't even know if I'm allowed to use that word here, but here I am. So yes, I remember and never forget, there I was in my teenage years, figuring things out with myself and my body. And I can't even remember exactly if my mom walked in on me or she kind of thought that's what I was doing. But I remember her telling me that it was the most sinful thing that I was doing. It was a sin. It was a sin. So I started to form this belief that this God thing that people were talking about, even Jesus, throw Jesus in there as well, because, in Christianity and Roman Catholic, it's kind of like synonymous. They're kind of like the lid and the pot go together, right? And I was like, wow, I don't know about this character, seems very like conditional about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I don't know how I feel about that. And for a couple of years, probably from my late teens until I was 29 years of age, I really distanced and pushed myself away from God. Like God was still in the background, like still there. But wasn't something that I actively spoke of. I didn't speak to God. I didn't speak of God. It was like, so yeah. And then when I was 29, a big life-changing experience happened, and my understanding of who and what God really was something that was tangibly felt, experienced, and understood. And then an awakening occurs, right? But I feel like that's a topic for another day. Maybe I've just sown the seed for another episode. But yes, I hope that this episode about the worm, the ants, and the bird has evoked some form of contemplation in your own world and in your own life. And perhaps I'd like to leave you with this question before I bid you adieu. Just thinking about that little story. Excuse me, just had lunch, so the curry is coming to say how's it. Just think about it in your life and just think about who you are in that story. Are you the worm? Are you the ant? Or are you that bird that sweeps in and whacks those ants off his worm now? Okay. Yeah. How do you see yourself, and who do you see yourself being and representing in this world? Because we are all reflections. Nature mirrors who we are, because we are nature. So yeah, I'd just be so curious to know who at this point in time in your life, because obviously you can be all three at different periods in time. Sometimes you feel like the worm, like, oh my God, like life's ending. Like I feel like I'm in pain. And then sometimes you're like the ant, there you are. Yeah, we've got lunch. We just like, like in ego. Yeah, man, yeah. And then in comes the bird, and like your ego goes, are you that bird who's just all powerful and in a second can make things change, or also can be a little bit arrogant and thinks they are better than thou and will just whack these freaking ants around and this worm is mine, bitches. Yeah, so at this particular point in time, no judgment, just contemplation, and be honest with yourself, guys. It's not about like, I don't want you to think that like I'm a worm, because, that would just mean I'm like not as good as. Like, no, God, guys, it's got nothing to do with that. At this particular point in your life, where do you see yourself? Like, who do you resonate with more? Do you resonate with the worm, the ant, or that bird? Or even the observer who's just checking everything out? Another option as well, Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's storytelling, and it's 21:37 on the timer and the clock, and my sound and audio is still good. So as always, continue to sow those seeds. Allow for the flow of life to find you, so that you may ultimately grow, illuminate, and glow. Until tomorrow's episode number 55, perhaps something transformational to chat about. Find us, stay magical, stay brilliant, stay bright, and keep shining your unique, one-of-a-kind light. Check you tomorrow.